Hello and welcome to the Ilisarniq series workshop on the IAQ Profiles. My name is Jessica MacDonald and I'm an associate editor with the Inuit Art Quarterly. I'm from Toronto, Ontario, and although everyone here is joining remotely from across North America, I'd like to acknowledge the land on which the Inuit Art Foundation is currently located. It is on the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, the original owners and custodians of this land. Today, this place is home to many, including a diverse urban Indigenous community of Inuit. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about how we get an IAQ profile and what that process looks like. All right, let's dive in. Joining us today is artist Gayle Kabloona. Gayle, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Gayle Kabloona. I currently live in Ottawa and I'm an Inuit artist. I do printmaking, ceramics, textiles, graphic art. I think that's it, some digital stuff. And I was just longlisted for the Kinoiwak Ashevak Memorial Award.
And you've had a profile before, you've had a profile created for yourself, right?
Yes, I did. And I think it was pretty recently, like maybe a year ago. So I just started doing art within the last 3 years or so, and was just doing smaller things and kind of overwhelmed at like creating a small business and trying to make a living as an artist. And I had been putting off creating an artist profile on the Inuit Art Foundation website because it was just another thing on my to-do list. And I think the Inuit Art Foundation actually reached out to me and said that like I didn't have to do it, and that a staff person at the foundation would do an interview with me and then they would write it up for me. So that was great and took like something off of my to-do list and made things a lot easier. So I think we're going to talk about that today.
Yes, we are. So let's back up a little bit to talk about what the platform is. If you haven't heard of the IAQ Profiles before, it's a place on the IAF website that is sort of a centralized online resource for Inuit artists of all stripes, past and present. We highlight the work of both contemporary and historical Inuit artists working in basically all mediums. And each profile celebrates an individual artist by showcasing your work, your artistic history, and all Canadian Inuit who are age 18 plus and are eligible to have a profile. So let's take a moment to look at one of these together. And I think we're going to look at Gayle's profile together. And as you can see up at the top, we have sort of a big image with her name, and this is an example of one of Gayle's artworks. And then we have a headshot that shows her face. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see we have a biography that shows off some of the accomplishments that she's had in her career over the last few years, where she got her start, what her work looks like, where her educational background is, and then all the way down to the bottom to some of the most recent exhibitions she's been part of or awards she's been longlisted for example. If we come down a little bit farther, we can see that big artwork again, but in full screen view, as well as a little bit of information about it. So you have your title here, the year it was created, and where the image comes from. And then there's a gallery that shows you some of the other artwork that she has created. All the way down at the bottom, we have some of the basic information about Gayle. So we can see what sorts of mediums she practices in, her artistic community, which can be where she is based presently, which is Ottawa, might also be where her familial community is, if that's what she as the artist wanted it to be, as well as date of birth. And of course, for artists that are no longer with us, we might also have date of death. And then this happy rotating teal box here shows off some of the most recent achievements that have happened. So what's the most recent publication that we know of that she's been involved in? What's her most recent achievement? What is the exhibition she's been in most recently? And if you click the blue box here, you'd be able to hop in and see her full artistic history. And then we have some links that come out to Gayle's own website, as well as her social media. And that is what an IAQ profile looks like. So outside of just needing to do it, Gayle, what was the thing that made you say, I want one of these?
Yeah, any kind of information that's out on the internet is good to have as an artist, that kind of like people can just go to and find out more information about me. And I was surprised when I checked it out recently that it's so up to date. I struggle to keep on top of things, and when my profile was created, it did not look like that. I didn't have like the big huge achievements and stuff, so it's been updated as time goes on, and it's good to have that central resource that just like holds all the information. And I don't know of any specific jobs that I've gotten, if they've come specifically from my profile, but I think other people's have.
Was it a factor in your decision that it's an all Inuit database at all?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really nice thing as well. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that, other than it's just it's good to have, and it's nice to see like some like something that I haven't made that is created for me, and like see somebody else's opinions or viewpoints on like what pictures are good to put in my portfolio. Or like it was nice to have somebody else write like about me as an artist, because I like, as the person myself, I'm always like busy working, or forget kind of, okay, what are like the cliff notes that people need to know, and it's good to have somebody else to filter that for you.
Mm. Some of the other benefits that are out there for profiles, of course, include, this database as a resource we know gets used by a lot of not only other artists, but also art collectors. We know that museum curators regularly look at it. So when they're thinking about who am I going to feature next, this comes top of mind. It also makes our job here at the IAQ a little easier, sort of selfishly, because we know, I'm looking for an illustrator to do this piece, and we go on to our own database and say, oh, we know this illustrator, we've worked with them before, and of course, as part of the process, we get to talk to you. I know Gayle has very kindly not said, but I'm the one that did her IQ profile back in the day, so we got to get to know each other a little bit, and hopefully that feels like a good part of the process.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a fun chat. It was like pretty quick, like maybe an hour or something, and just an easy chat, not like stressful or anything like that. We both found out that we like Taylor Swift.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that interview. So I know that you've mentioned already, we reached out to say we should get an IQ profile for you. And I think we were talking to one another, what would you say, within a week of that first contact?
Yep, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and as you said, pretty pretty standard interview. I know we talked about your artistic history and how you got started, um, sort of the A to Z of your career up to that point. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing that we talked about was like when I first started making things, it was when my grandmother was getting sicker and doing a lot of medical travel. And like as a family member, you want to be able to do something for that person, but there's really nothing that you can do. So I needed something to focus on and something to like build that was like concrete and like in front of me. And you actually said that after talking to so many Inuit artists, that art coming out of grief was fairly common. And that was interesting for me to hear, because it kind of like made me feel like the things that I was going through weren't only happening to me, and that's like a really common thing. And that was nice to hear.
Hmm. Was there anything that sort of came as a surprise or came out of left field during that interview?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's really easy to talk Like to you, I think you've been my contact at IAQ and IAF, but they always like, we'll do the interview and then you write things out and then I get a chance to proofread it and make sure that everything being said I'm okay with. And like if I said something that I like just to you that I don't want published, I can say, oh, okay, well, let's backtrack on that one.
Yes. All right, well, let's talk then about that drafting process. So after we do the interview, I know one of the things I always be sure to say is, I always am sure to say is, what comes next? And that is that I take the transcript away because we record that interview, and then I do a little bit of research online to figure out, are there any holes that we didn't speak about or speak to? I don't think that I came back to you in that research process to say, can you tell me a little bit more about this thing? Did I?
No.
No. That sometimes happens though, if there's something that I can't get a hold of. But yes, then I make a draft and it comes back to you. So you spoke a little bit about the back and forth process there. Can you tell us? Can you tell everybody what that back and forth looked like when it came to adding and removing pieces?
I didn't have a lot to add or remove. I just I like having a look through things that are being published about me to make sure that I know what's going out, and just like little tiny details, like if I need to change like a little word to like mean it, to make it mean a little different, then I will. But I'm really specific, so maybe some people are like, oh yeah, this is great.
I know that you've been in several other publications since we did that. Have you found this experience very similar to that or different from what other magazines and publications have done when they're writing about you?
Yeah, it has been really similar, like the process. Probably the best version I've had with you because like the Inuit Art Foundation obviously knows about Inuit art and Inuit artists and the Inuit culture. So any other interview I've had to explain a lot more or like proofread harder because they don't have that context going in. So the process with you was really easy and really great and straightforward. And it like lets you talk more about yourself as an artist, I think, when you don't have to explain like the whole culture and background and history and all of that. So it's nice to just focus on what you actually do as an artist within the Inuit art genre. So I really liked that. But yeah, the interview process was good practice for me as well. Like getting the elevator speech thing, like being able to say like a shortened version of everything that I've done in the past few years and get used to talking about myself, and yeah, just kind of get more practice.
So from there, once we've done the interview, we've done some research and drafting, we've arrived at a place where we're both happy. Then I believe I sent you a permission form, right? That details what we are and aren't allowed to do. And so when we're thinking about artist permissions, that can cover a whole wide range of stuff. But the permission form that we ask for the profiles has sort of four things that you can say yay or nay to. And one of which is you're okay to use my images online, you're okay to talk about me online, in print. Um, we also ask, can we use your work for promotional purposes? And that's up to you to say yes or no to. Totally your call. But our goal is that the artist feels like they're in the driver's seat. That's what we want to have happen for the profiles. And for the artist to feel like they're in control of their own narrative, which is one of the reasons why we make sure that, Gayle, you saw it and we're able to say, yes, this works, or no, this doesn't. Because if you'd said, this doesn't work for me at all, we would have rewritten it. And that's just our plan, is to make sure that you feel like you're in control of your artistic narrative in this space. So that's pretty much the creation process. I know we're only about 20 minutes in here, but it's sort of pretty fast and straightforward here. So the sort of next part is how an artist gets started on the profiles. Gayle's a little bit of a unique case. We had already featured her in a couple artists, and she had wonderfully been writing for us before the profile was created. But um, if we haven't reached out to you, you artists are able to reach out to us at any time at IAQ at InuitArtFoundation.org. And in terms of what kind of stuff you might want to think about preparing in advance, as Gayle said, the elevator pitch, a really important thing to think about. What's sort of the most important thing about my art that I can tell folks? If you have your own website, if you have social media where you publicize your art, that's a good thing to have on hand. If you've been documenting your work, taking pictures of what you've created, those images are good things to have on hand. So that when you come and we talk about the work, as Gayle said, we just, the more background we have, the easier it is for you to talk about it with some context, and for us to understand where your context is, where you're coming from.
Sure. I'll just say one more thing. Like I've always appreciated that, like in my artist profile, it always says that I got my start in like knitting and textile work, because it's true. And I really like that, like the definition of art is so broad, and you guys recognize that beading and sewing and knitting and all of that is like completely valid as an art form, and that you can have a profile as an artist, just if you think that you're just drawing pictures, or if you're making earrings, that's really like, you can start there, or that can be your whole practice. Like I really appreciate that.
Well, okay, I see a couple questions here. One of them I think is for you, Gayle, asking what kinds of opportunities have opened up since getting a profile?
Oh my goodness. I've had so many opportunities in the past year. I think that's when my profile went up, but I've made a commission for Canada Goose, the retail art collection. I had my art on the Canada Post Truth and Reconciliation stamp. I did work for Google Pixel. I just finished some work for the Winnipeg Art Gallery. It's just been never ending. It seems like there's always something good popping up in my email.
Fantastic. Question two, I think, is for me about how do we get a profile started? And there's a couple different ways. The easiest one is just get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us directly via email, IAQ at InuitArtFoundation.org. We also have a content box on our website, InuitArtFoundation.org, and there's just a contact button right at the bottom. You can also write us on our social media, and our social media manager will tag probably me and say, hey, this person got in touch, wants a profile. You can also register on our brand new artist portal, which will prompt us to ask you, okay, you've registered as an artist, should we be making a profile for you? So there's a couple different ways to go about it, all of which will basically end up with someone contacting you to say, let's make this happen. Do you just send updates once a month, or how does the new material get found and uploaded? There's a couple answers to that question. We have about 650 odd artists on the biography profile platform, which is a big scope for us to update. So on the staff side, we're constantly combing. We have Google alerts set up for the artists that we know about for Inuit art more broadly. And when we flag that there's been an article published and this artist we know is involved in it, it gets added to a list to get updated to the profile. I don't believe, Gayle, that you've ever sent in like a once a month, can you please update my profile? Is that right? No, I don't think so. But that is totally an option as well, for you to just reach out to us directly and say, hey, this new exciting thing happened. Can we add it to my profile? Or even, I just did this new piece that I'm in love with. Can we please put it on the gallery? That happens. The other option is actually on the profile itself, and maybe I'll share my screen again here. On the profile itself, there's actually a suggest an edit button up at the top, which if you click into, will say, all right, on this artist profile, maybe you are the artist, maybe you're not. I mean, this platform was created so that crowdsourcing could happen. So in instances where it's not the artist that's submitting a potential edition, we actually go back to the artist and say, is this correct? What has happened here? But yeah, you enter your name, you enter your email, and then you can put in your suggested edit. So if something new has happened, you can put it here, and that goes directly to our team as well for us to make an update in accordance with what's happened there. Okay. I also see someone asking about the old INAC biographies, which, for those that don't know, was a government program that essentially sent researchers up to the Arctic to speak with Inuit artists, and then they made biographies for them that were, quite short and mostly focused on exhibition history, publication history, and what institutional collections their works could be found in. Now, those INAC bios were a couple things. They were primarily focused, as I said, on sort of the listing of achievements more so than on the person's personal progress or what their work looked like. And so they really had very bare bones information about the artist as a person. Usually it would tell you this is when they were born or when they passed away. These are the mediums that they were known to work in. And these are the other Inuit artists that they're related to. For us, that's not enough on a couple different levels. We do keep track of the achievements. We want to make sure that the artists, the fullness of their work is represented, and also that we have consent. One of the problems with the INAC bios is that after they'd done those interviewers, they just went back to the South and didn't really talk to the artists about where was this material going to go, this huge repertoire of personal information, who was going to have access to it. And so there wasn't really good permissions for all of that information about the artist to be shared with the world. So we've talked a little bit about the permission form that lays out what you're signing on to in very clear terms, and it's available not only in English, but also in Inuktitut, in Roman and in syllabics, in case you're more comfortable communicating in Inuktitut. So permissions is one thing that's really important. And then the other is the fullness of the biography. And rather than focusing on the personal life of your family, we're much more focused on what is your art practice about. And in some cases, those two things come together. I know, Gayle, one of the big things for you is working on your art and thinking about your relations, and they play a big part in your artistic practice, yeah? So sometimes those two things come together, but we're not listing off these are your siblings and this is your mom and this is your dad, because that's not what you, the artist, is about, even though that's a big part of you, the person. We've had another question. What are some of the challenges or difficulties you face in putting these profiles together? Gayle, any challenges or difficulties that come in mind for you?
Not really for me, just like I kind of spoke to it already, that it was on my to-do list, kind of off near the bottom because I had a lot of other pressing things that I had to deal with. So I actually thought that like the process made things a lot easier for me, because I could kind of, what's the word, outsource doing a lot of the work and then just get a proofread at the end, and yeah, it looks good. So yeah, that was easy for me. I very much appreciated that.
Was it challenging or scary at all to do the interview?
No, not at all.
Okay. So on the sort of publishing end, the thing that can be challenging is documentation sometimes, and most often that comes in terms of good photographs of the artwork. Particularly with Instagram, we're seeing a lot more these days that artists are taking really good photos of their work, and it's usually in high enough quality that we can run it online. But sometimes, we'll get shots that don't have great lighting or they cut off part of the artwork. So particularly for those artists that are selling their work, it's sometimes hard to get shots of that show where they've gone as opposed to what work is currently sitting in their studio. One of the other potential challenges is just verifying stuff. So in instances where sometimes we're working on a profile for an artist that has passed away, and so it's sometimes difficult to verify what's true and what's not, because lots of misinformation gets published about famous artists from long ago, unfortunately. And so in those instances, we often try to reach out to their family and their descendants and ask what the sort of family story is, and try to figure out what the fact pattern is there. But for artists that are still with us who we're talking to, the artist is sort of our fact base and is usually able to answer any and all questions we have. So as long as we get an interview, we're usually okay. What is unique about your editing process, and how is it different from editing on other platforms? That's a great question. So on the profiles, there are a couple people that see it. So Gayle, as the artist, gets to see it. It gets to be part of the editing process, but also our deputy editor has a hand, gets to look over it and say, yes, this is consistent with the other stuff we do, or it's not. And we usually have what we call a fresh eyes editor, which is someone that knows nothing about the artist, hasn't seen any of it, come in and say, oh, I read this, I understand it. You've sort of conveyed what I needed to know about this artist if I came in knowing nothing. So that's on the profiles. And obviously the big part of the editing process with the profile is making sure that the artist signs on, that they're okay with what's published. This changes a little bit when we think about the articles that we publish online, and I'm saying articles as opposed to the profiles, the biographies, as well as in print. We have a slightly different editorial process there. There are certainly more eyes than the one editor on them, and we go through, copy editing, fact checking, but permissions works a little differently because, as a news organization, while our standard is that whenever there is someone being directly quoted, that person needs to see and sign off on the quote itself. We can't give editorial control fully over to the subject of the article. And so while it's never our goal to publish anything bad or inaccurate or make anybody feel any sort of negative way, you won't see or sign off on the full article that's about you in the same way that you would see and sign off on the biography that's about you. And it's sort of a difference between this is an artist's own space on the profiles, and this is the editorial space for us to make news, or to make, to have a critical meaning, not bad, but thoughtful, a thoughtful reflection on something or another. So that's sort of how those two things are a little bit different. A lot of the people are the same. Our editorial department works across all of these platforms, but our standards when it comes to what is the story, what is the permissions, who needs to sign off what and where, change a little bit. Are there any resources or support to help with documenting artwork? I can't say off the top of my mind that I know of any we have produced. Gayle, are there any that you have used in your journey as an artist?
I use outside help most of the time to document things really high resolution, but I know that that's not available in a lot of places. But if you're in an urban center, like I use Shoebox Studio here, and he takes either a really high resolution photograph of my work or scans it, so it gets every single detail, like that black and white bear that's on my profile, that was scanned at a really high resolution and was made huge at the National Art Center. So you want like really high quality reproductions for some things, but then like in an easier direction, like when I was first setting up my Instagram to be like a business art Instagram and not just my personal stuff, I had one friend who was really good at aesthetics and just like deciding what kind of lighting or what kind of filters or like what the whole page is going to look like. So just thinking about like taking better product photos, or deciding if you want to have like a look to your pictures or to your page, that's good. And then also direct sunlight or like natural light is the best for taking photographs of anything. So a lot of the times if I'm taking pictures of like my ceramics or something just for my Instagram or for my website, I'll set up a little like chair with a backdrop right in front of a window so that I can get really good pictures just for my own use. So that's probably like a really good place to start.
I mean, as you say, for some instances, you need a really high resolution. For us on web particularly, you don't. What phone cameras take these days is plenty big enough for us to use, for most people to use for web purposes. Print is a little different, but the number one thing is some good natural light and a solid background. I don't care if it's black, I don't care if it's white, I don't care if it's purple, but if it's solid, that way we can manipulate it on our end to make it all look nice and make sure the colors come through properly. Thanks, Gayle.
And just remembering to take a picture of it before it leaves to go wherever it's going. And if you're really organized, then you can get like a folder on your computer and have everything in one place. That's very helpful too. So
yes,
just remembering to do it first of all.
Yeah, well, and if you're making a lot of work trying to remember what was the year that I made this thing, because that I imagine is one of the things that comes back a lot to say for captions, what's the title of this work? What year was it made? What materials did you put in there?
I just made my first Excel spreadsheet to keep everything in order and the dimensions. Had to start keeping track of that.
Wonderful. We have another question. Do you have any advice or best practices for other nonprofit organizations and editors that regularly work with publishing Inuit artists? Well, we have a set of in-house editorial standards that spells out how we want to treat people very broadly. And we're a nonprofit specifically dedicated to working with Inuit artists and promoting Inuit artists' work. And that guides a lot of what we do. So there's a couple of sort of basic things, one of which is if you're using artwork from an Inuit artist and it's not specifically to promote that artist, you should probably pay them and pay them for their time. And another is making sure that everyone's super clear on where this is going to appear and how it's going to appear, what the context around it is going to be, so that everyone is able to give consent in a way that is meaningful. It doesn't mean anything for a reporter to say, hey, can I talk to you, if they don't tell you where this talk is going to appear, what's going to come out of it. Gayle, on your end, is there anything that stands out for you about working with other people, about the way that you like to be treated?
I really like things that you said, or if somebody reaches out to me with a project idea, I like to know the deadline, the payment, what the project is, who else is working on the project, what it's for, like all in the first email. Like if I get an email that's like, hey, I'm thinking about something and can we hop on a quick call, like some red flags, because I have been contacted about like projects that have nothing to do with what I do, and then all of a sudden I'm on a call and I have to say no really nicely, but then I kind of feel trapped, and then they're trying to convince me. So those are weird. So just really clear. It's good if you have like a project that's already ongoing and you know exactly what you want. And if I'm coming up with something for you, that's an entirely different thing. Like I'm an artist and I'm not like an art director or a consultant that's gonna feed ideas into like a big huge project or something like that. So making sure that your project is art if you're contacting an artist about it.
Yeah, that's really good. And being clear with the deadlines, I think, is also an important one there, as you mentioned. One of the other things I'll say, which you sort of might have hinted at there, is not asking that artist to speak on behalf of all artists, which is something that we get asked a lot too, is can you make, I want a ruling on, is this culturally appropriate for me to say? Different people are going to have different opinions about that. It's not a monolith. There are many people that work in this industry, some of which might say, yeah, that's fine. Some of which might say it won't be. An individual artist can't rule on that any more than we can rule on that. It's not our place to do that. For statements about what is culturally appropriate for Inuit, we most commonly refer that to the Inuit Tapirot Karatami, which is the nationwide body that supports all Inuit throughout Canada. And yeah, that's what I'll say about that yeah, an Inuit artist can't speak on behalf of all Inuit artists any more than an Impressionist artist could speak on behalf of all Impressionists. I see another question here about, do you use the igloo tag? To which I will say, yes and no. We're actually the body. So for those that don't know, the igloo tag is a sort of a copyright thing that is meant to be affixed to Inuit artwork to signify, yes, this was actually made by an Inuit person, an Inuk. And it's been in use since the 50s. And it used to be that the federal government oversaw this copywriting program and was meant to be enforcing that this tag, which signifies authenticity, is only being applied to authentic Inuit works. In 2017 or 2018, I apologize. This is all on our website if you have questions about it, and we'll add a resource at the end. But this tag was transferred over to the Inuit Art Foundation to monitor. And so what we do is work with galleries who pay a licensing fee that helps, that goes to our programming to support artists more broadly. But as part of that, they're able to use the igloo tag to affix it to the Inuit works they sell. They have to agree to a code of conduct when it comes to the way that they treat and deal with their Inuit artists, and that means respectful and fair dealing, essentially. And so there are, I believe, 11 or 12 licensed galleries out there that use the igloo tag. It's mostly used if you sell art, which we don't. So we administer, don't use it so much. With that, I would say we have reached the end of today's workshop. Thank you so much, Gayle, for coming and for your wonderful and thoughtful answers to the questions.
Thank you. I saw a few congratulations in the chat, so thank you.
So thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.